Hey ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I've gone a little far. We're talking about historical context today, so let's get straight into it. Alright, so context, as you know, will help to give you a greater understanding of why Fritz did things when he wanted in his film, and these are things you need to mention in your paragraphs. So basically, Germany had only just become one unified nation in 1871. It had been a collection of states. And it became really powerful in terms of army, navy, and natural resources and industry. They were trying to play catch up with the French, the English, and the Russians by trying to grab as many countries as they could that other people hadn't already claimed. So basically a whole lot of bad colonialism went on. So this was one of the factors that led to World War I happening. I'm not going to go into why it happened. You don't need to know that. But basically, yeah, terrible, horrible thing that happened for 4 years. And, you know, that's only a few years before this film comes out. But basically, late in November in 1918, the Kaiser, who's the guy in charge, the emperor, he abdicated. And basically because there had been sort of socialist uprisings and rebellion, and Germany was declared a republic. And so they came up with a democratic government. So the war ended on the 11th of November, and Germany signed the Treaty of Versailles, where it was basically blamed for the war. It lost a lot of territory. It wasn't allowed to have an army. It was forced to pay huge reparations, which is basically a whole lot of money mainly to France and Belgium to help them rebuild after the war. This is money that probably Germany could have done with to help rebuild its own self, but yeah, it really wasn't allowed to. So just going back on what the war actually brought us, huge advances in technology, mass production in factories of things like, you know, tanks, guns, bullets, you know, all that kind of thing that people need in war. There were huge advances in, you know, getting the country wholly electric. The telegraph was much better. Aviation and planes had really come a long way. You know, technology was now ubiquitous rather than something that was kind of around a bit. There was greater social freedom for women. With, you know, half the male population off fighting war, you know, the ladies were now allowed to step in and become, you know, postmen, work in these factories and do jobs that really needed to be done. After the war, moral standards kind of changed. So you're looking at the idea of, you know, a lot of really disenfranchised people coming back from war and thinking about, you know, God and religion and what is real and what isn't, and you know, why would God do this? And really thinking about their place in the world. Also, people had become a little more aware that life really is fleeting, and maybe we should have some fun while we're here. In the long run, basically that war and the peace settlement led to, you know, the rise of dictatorships in Italy and Germany and the outbreak of World War II. Okay, and that context will help you when you're looking at 1984. Now, in terms of the Weimar Republic, that was the government that had, but it was the named government, and basically the parliament was made up of a whole lot of different parties. It wasn't like what we have today, where you have, you know, Liberal and Labour, or Republicans and Democrats. You know, we have a lot of political parties here, so it was quite fractious. And certainly through the first 3 or 4 years, there were a lot of, you know, left-wing uprisings, right-wing terrorism. You know, most of the sort of socialist and communist sort of people were based around cities, and the older sort of landed gentry, as it were your more right-wing style. But that is just a very big simplification. And as I mentioned earlier, the reparations and the German economy just in those first years after the war was just in a hole. And there was massive inflation, which became referred to as hyperinflation. Have a little look at that. Now, from 1923 to 1929, Germany really started to pick up. The economy started working again. They were able to, you know, rebuild factories and change factories to become peaceful factories, as it were. Foreign policy in terms of repairing relationships with other countries, that was going very, very well. And there really was a cultural flowering, certainly in the major cities of art and dance and novels and things like that. So it was a really sort of prosperous time, not only economically, but also socially. So what you guys now need to do is just have a look at that the last 2 minutes of what I've gone through. And for each of the 3 or 4 bullet points on the page, for one of them, I want you to write down a more specific example. So where I've said something along the lines of left-wing rebellions, okay, find me a specific concrete example of that and bring that in to share to the class. Cheers.